We are now in day 3 of Superlatives Week, and continuing this jam-packed week, I bring forth my 5 breakout candidates that will dominate your league in 2023 fantasy football. 5 guys that I think have the opportunity to smash that you guys need on your fantasy football teams. But if you guys enjoy, smash the like button down below, comment some of your favorite breakout candidates, and of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the road to 35,000 before the season starts. Do not miss out. But with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so my number 5 overall breakout candidate that will dominate your league in 2023 fantasy football is Jahan Dotson, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, currently going off the board in terms of multi-site ADP as the wide receiver 36th, 98th overall player. And this is a guy who just missed out on sleeper qualification by 2 ADP, but he's so exciting that I had to put him on my breakouts list. And the story of Jahan Dotson is that he's a wide receiver who went inside the top 20 of the 2022 NFL draft, a very, very stacked wide receiver class. He goes inside the top 20. He's coming off a rookie season where he was the wide receiver 43 in PPR points per game. In games, he played over 60% of the snaps and now has a true opportunity to truly take the leap as a second-year player in 2023. And with Jahan Dotson, we're getting a true 3-level threat wide receiver as charted by Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception. And he thinks that Jahan Dotson checks off the same boxes we'd expect from a true, legit #1 caliber wide receiver over on the site. And from a peripheral standpoint, you're looking at a top 20 pick already showing true wide receiver upside according to Harmon himself in year 1. That's already a great sign for the talent level we're dealing with when it comes to Jahan Dotson. And on top of the production and the talent profiles as a rookie, we now have a potential situational improvement for Washington going into 2023, a team who started Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke throughout the season, a duo that combined for 535 of the team's 554 total pass attempts. They're out, and in comes second-year pivot Sam Howell, who has officially won the Week 1 starting quarterback job. Both Wentz and Heineke last season were downright awful in the starts they made for the team. But with Howell, he showed a ton of promise against a stingy Cowboys defensive unit in Week 18 this past year. While, of course, it is an extremely limited sample size, Howell completed 11 of 19 passes for 169 passing yards and a touchdown against that Cowboys unit. And Ron Rivera even went on record to say he made a big mistake not turning the reins over to Howell earlier in the season, as reported by Albert Breer. And the Howell train has been in takeoff all offseason, with new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy coming over from the Chiefs. We should expect a revamped passing game that plays to the team's best offensive threats, their young wide receivers. And this is a tweet from Louis Riddick where he basically said that Bieniemy is going to make you defend horizontally and vertically. He loves the spacing of this commander scheme, aka the Chiefs scheme that they were running with Bieniemy over in Kansas City, and the speed and athleticism that they have on their perimeter with guys like Terry McLaurin, with guys like Jahan Dotson, with guys like Curtis Samuel, should make this offense one of the most improved units entering 2023 this upcoming year. This is not your dad's old school Washington offense, ground and pound, John Riggins up the gut. This is not your standard Washington offense. As long as Sam Howell, who both myself and Corey loved entering last year's NFL draft, takes the step that all reports are saying he is, we could see this Commanders offense being one of the most shocking units in the NFL in 2023. And from a macro perspective, I'm always willing to bet on a second-year wide receiver who showed as much as Dotson did as a rookie. I just think he's a no-brainer at the 98th overall pick that the multi-site ADP has him at right now. So if he's available in your 8th round, in your 9th round of your fantasy drafts, do not leave them without Jahan Dotson. He's got wide receiver 2 upside at that range of your draft. My number 4 breakout candidate on this list is a guy that you'd know if you've been an FSC supporter for quite some time, but I cannot stop drafting Javonte Williams at his current running back 29, 77th overall price tag in home league ADP. This is a guy that we were all over in the 2nd round last year, and we were looking like geniuses prior to his unfortunate multi-ligament knee tear that he suffered in week 4 of the 2022 campaign. Prior to that, he was averaging 19.3 opportunities and 7 targets per game, looking like one of the true young star running backs in the entire NFL. Obviously, he suffers that injury. We've been worried about propping him up all offseason, but the news in regards to his knee at this point and how he's fast-tracked all of his progress to his point has been promising. And Dr. Mark Idikis, an orthopedic surgeon, has noted in a recent pod over on Fantasy Points that what he's seeing right now with how the Broncos have handled Javonte Williams, he mentioned that the rehab must be going well. And the theory about Javonte's fast progress has actually materialized in the preseason. His recovery has been truly mind-boggling. And you'll see a couple tweets on the screen right now from both Sam Sherman and Dwayne McFarland. But Sam says that Javonte Williams' promising return suffers that multi-ligament ACL tear, and he came back to a fairly even committee with Samaje Perine. Also noted by Dwayne McFarland that in 2 drives with the starting skill players, Williams and Samaje Perine, like Sam mentioned, split the backfield. We expected all offseason that for the first few weeks, this would be the Samaje Perine show. Maybe Javonte Williams would work back into a committee by week 6, week 7, but the fact that we're already seeing an even committee at this point in the preseason shows that come week 4, come week 5, this is a legitimate running back with RB1 upside. I'm not here saying that, of course, he doesn't have any risk. We're still dealing with an injury that usually hinders backs for much longer than the timeline Javonte is currently on. But I'm not a doctor. And when an orthopedic surgeon who literally deals with knee ligaments on a day-to-day basis is comfortable with the rehab process, and the Broncos' preseason usage up to this point indicates that he can already handle work, I just think that's telling. And I suggest, if you're going to be drafting Javonte Williams in this round 7 area, you should probably get some early season production. Maybe draft Javonte as your running back 2, your running back 3, backfill with guys like Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, archetypes like that. But if you're getting Javonte in round 7, this has a legitimate chance where come week 7, come week 8, this is a guy we're consistently ranking inside of our top 12 running backs. The only risk when it comes to Javonte is the knee. But if every single report we're seeing has indicated positive signs about that knee injury, I'm going to be all in, and I think he's a must draft at his current cost. Again, 77th overall, where you're drafting, your James Connors, your Dalvin Cooks. Instead, draft some upside in this range. If you're going to deviate in the running back dead zone, make sure they have legitimate top 12 upside like Javonte Williams does. But before we get into my number 3 breakout candidate for 2023 fantasy football, I want to spread awareness of the number 1 tool to crush your home leagues in 2023, our redraft rankings manifesto. And between mine and Corey's top 200 rankings, positional rankings, our rankings compared to your home league ADP, risk ratings, and my true series where I broke down patterns from every top player's 2022 campaign, you'll be fully equipped to take down the ultimate prize. And if you want all of this, there are 2 easy ways to access right now. So the first way is if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FSC on your first deposit, not only will you receive a 100% match back on your first deposit up to $100. If you put 50 in, you'll get 100 in terms of site credit to play with. But you also get full access to our redraft rankings manifesto and our weekly rankings come season, where we're going to be updating those weekly. If you guys have start-sit decisions, you don't know who to start in your flex, you can go check that out on a week-to-week basis. All 18 weeks going to be updated over there. The other way to access it is to go over to flockfantasy.com and use promo code FSC for 30% off, whether you want to be a flocker or a mother flocker. And the perks of that is you'll get access to the manifesto as well as access to our private Discord. And if you sign up as an annual mother flocker right now, you'll be able to receive a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Corey. If you're hopping on a draft with your home league buddies and you literally want us on the call to dominate your leagues, you can do that right now by signing up as an annual mother flocker. Like I said, you would also get access to that manifesto. So it is currently by far the best deal available to help dominate your home leagues in 2023. But going back to the video, we go on to my number 3 breakout candidate, and that's going to be Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, currently going off the board as the wide receiver 29, 72nd overall player in terms of multi-site ADP. And Aiyuk's a very interesting case for a lot of fantasy football players. Like, on one hand, you'll get people who are more pessimistic on him, who say that the overall volume, number 3 or 4 option on a low passing volume offense does exist with Brandon Aiyuk. But I'm here to make the counterclaim that he's much closer to being the number 1 overall target on this offense than he is the number 4 option on this offense. And for starters, this guy's just insanely good at football. The wide receiver guru himself, I already made preface to in this video, Matt Harmon, has gone on record to call Brandon Aiyuk one of the most underrated wide receivers in football. And it's telling given the fact that he literally compared him to a consensus top 5 wide receiver with Stephon Diggs. Literally taken from his site, he says, his situation reminds me a good bit of Stephon Diggs in Minnesota. Anyone who knows ball realizes he's a good wide receiver. And he also says that reception perception shows he can beat man coverage like one of the top wideouts in the entire league. And Harmon wasn't joking when it comes to Aiyuk's ability to demolish man and press coverage. Shows that he could separate up there with the likes of the best wide receivers in the entire league. And this isn't just coming in the intermediate portion of the field like you'd expect a prototypical Shanahan wide receiver. This dude cooks DBs at all three levels of the field, like you can see with the chart on the screen. Basically green across the board aside from the comeback route and the curl route. He downright outproduced Deebo Samuel in his own wide receiver room last year, a guy that I actually like in fantasy football this year. So to say that he's the number 3 or number 4 option while Deebo's this unanimous number 1 in the passing game is simply misinformed in my opinion. While I do, of course, expect Deebo to bounce back and regain some of the efficiency that he didn't have in 2022, we'd be foolish to think that there isn't still a decent shot that Aiyuk just straight up alphas him, man. Baked into all of this is the Brock Purdy factor. While I do think there's a possibility for volatility across a full 17-game sample, that's already baked into Aiyuk's 72nd overall ADP cost. If Brock Purdy in year 2 under Kyle Shanahan shows that not only was his rookie season not a fluke, but in fact improves off a strong showing with a full offseason of starting reps plus Trey Lance out of the building, the sky is the limit on what could be one of the 5 best offenses in the entire NFL. And it's pretty simple to me. Betting on talented players on good teams is usually a recipe for success in fantasy football, especially when they possess the ceiling that Brandon Aiyuk has in fantasy this year. Make sure if he's going anywhere close to the 70s in your drafts, that you have 100% rostership of Brandon Aiyuk, because that is far too cheap. This is a guy that myself and Corey view as a top 50 overall player entering 2023 fantasy football. But moving on to my number 2 breakout candidate, and that's going to be Christian Watson, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going off the board as the wide receiver 24, 61st overall player on multi-site ADP. And his profile is really fascinating. You know, the song and dance of his rookie campaign this past year is genuinely a tale of two halves. So if you look in the first half of the year, Watson battled, drop issues, never really got consistent playing time, never really got that opportunity to establish himself as a starting wide receiver for the Packers. Never mind the clear-cut alpha of the offense, but that all changed once we entered week 10. And I tweeted this out back in May, but once Christian Watson fully became a full-time player week 10 on, and that includes games against Miami where he left at 38% of the snaps, and that includes a game against Minnesota where he only played 60% of the snaps, in those 8 games, he commanded 52 targets, 31 receptions, 523 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns, a pace of 111 targets, 66 receptions, over 1,100 receiving yards, and 15 touchdowns as a raw rookie wide receiver. He not only took off, he downright skyrocketed. And obviously, we can't project 15 touchdowns across a full season like he was on pace for last year, especially given the expectations of Jordan Love from a baseline standpoint comparatively to what he was getting from Aaron Rodgers this past year. But Watson is now entering year 2 versus year 1. The volume will inherently increase given the efficiency at hand here. He was one of the most efficient wide receivers in the entire NFL as a rookie this past year. And while it's not Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love's still an unknown. He could very well be good and increase Watson's already sky-high ceiling. And at the end of the day, anytime I can bet on a wide receiver in this type of rarefied air in the mid-rounds of my draft, I am smashing the draft button. Once this guy earned his consistent role, he was not only one of the best rookie wide receivers in the NFL, he was legitimately one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, period. You guys can see here in games with 60+% of the snaps, he was literally the wide receiver 8 in PPR points per game. The only guys ahead of him in the stretch, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson. The majority of them being familiar names going in the top 2 rounds of your drafts right now. And now, so far as expected through the preseason, Watson has been treated like the team's clear-cut wide receiver 1 in terms of the usage, pacing the team's wide receivers in snaps and routes run with the first-team offense, while your BUFFOON league mates are taking dead zone backs like James Conner, like Dalvin Cook. You'd be stacking up elite upside young wide receivers like Christian Watson in 2023. Do not let him slip out of your hands. And then finally, my number 1 breakout candidate entering 2023 fantasy football is a tight end. He plays for Atlanta. It's going to be Kyle Pitts, going as the tight end 5, 58th overall player on multi-site ADP. And he is one of the most controversial names in fantasy football, but I'll make the case for him. And let's first start by debunking this narrative that Arthur Smith can't use Kyle Pitts. Per Player Profiler, Kyle Pitts last season in the 10 games he played, a 27.3% target share, second at the position, 34.3% target rate, by far number 1 at the position, 772 air yards, which ranked 5th despite him literally missing 7 games, a 32.9% air yard share, which is up there with some of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL, a 13.1 average depth of target, which ranked 2nd at the position, and 13 deep targets, which was 1st at the position with, like I said, him missing 7 games. And it's pretty simple. We're betting on elite volume, a 6'6", 245-pound, 4.4 speed, 3rd-year tight end that just went 4th overall in the NFL draft in 2021. From a talent profile bet, he is the exact archetype we look for from our league winners on a year-to-year basis. And I don't think any logical fantasy players would argue about Pitts' talent. I mean, if you're arguing about the talent that Pitts possesses, you simply do not know ball. The main drawback that people have when it comes to pessimism around Kyle Pitts is about just how potent this Falcons offense can be, as well as pointing out their historically low passing volume this past year in 2022. But for starters, that 2022 number is just not repeatable. With Marcus Mariota last year, the Falcons literally paced for 369 pass attempts across a 17-game season, the 3rd lowest mark in the NFL since 1985. Mariota was literally taking them back generations of football evolution with how bad and how inefficient he was as the starting quarterback this past year. And I'm not going to act like Ridder was a world beater, but you go from 369 pass attempt pace with Mariota in the fold to when Desmond Ridder took over, they were on pace for 460 pass attempts, which would have still ranked 30th overall in the NFL. So it's not like we're asking for them to, throw the ball 600, throw the ball 650 times. As long as they're not literally one of the most historical outliers in the passing game, we are set. Given the talent level and the volume output we could expect for Kyle Pitts in 2023, let's just say this offense gets to 500 pass attempts. Desmond Ridder, he's like a top 25 quarterback rather than a bottom 5 guy. He makes improvements from last year, full offseason as a starter. We're getting to 500 pass attempts. A 28% target share for Kyle Pitts, which was basically what he averaged last year, would have equated to 140 targets for one of the best players with the ball in his hands in the entire NFL. And I'm not just talking tight end position. I'm talking the entire NFL. Get the ball in the hands of Kyle Pitts. He is one of the most lethal players league-wide. I expect this offense to be concentrated to their big 3 options, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. And I think this is going to be one of the most improved units in the entirety of the NFL in 2023. And like I said, assuming Desmond Ridder can just give you serviceable quarterback play, let's say he's 80-85% of what Ryan Tannehill was doing in this Arthur Smith scheme, Pitts is in a position to not only beat his ADP, but downright smash it. But either way, if you guys enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. 83.2% of you guys watching in the last month are not subscribed. If you guys got real value from this video, if you guys enjoyed, if you think I did a good job, it's only fair to smash that button and help us reach our goal of 35,000 subscribers prior to Thursday night's kickoff next week. So if you want to help us out, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But with that being said, peace out and enjoy your Wednesday.